Hi, this is Professor Nabazny, and this video is a demonstration of how to solve a subnetting scenario. It's similar to a subnetting exercise where you're calculating out things like the total number of subnets, number of bits borrowed, etc., except that for the scenario, you're also asked to figure out additional information like what is the second subnet range, what is the subnet number for a particular subnet, what is the broadcast address, and then what is the range of assignable addresses in a subnet. So in this scenario, we're given this information. We're given the network address of 198.125.60.0. We are not told the number of needed subnets, so we'll have to figure that out. And we're told that the number of needed usable hosts for each subnet is 45. So for sure we know that this is a Class C network because the first octet is between 192 and 223. Our default subnet mask is 255.255.255.0. So the total number of subnets. Well, we know that we're going to be dealing with just the last octet. So if we look at that, 255.255, and then let's write out the bit places. So if we know that we need 45 usable hosts, we can calculate out how many bits we need to use for the hosts. So we know that 2 to the h, and the h being the number of host bits, will tell us the total number of possible hosts. And then if we subtract 2, that will tell us the number of usable hosts. So we need to get to something that is greater than or equal to 45. So if we start with just one host bit, 2 to the 1 would be 2 minus 2 equals 0. That's not going to work. 2 to the 2 minus 2, that would be 4 minus 2. That would be 2. Nope. And so we can keep going up. If we get to 2 to the 5th minus 2, 2 to the 5th is 32, minus 2 equals 30. 2 to the 6th minus 2, and 2 to the 6th is 64 minus 2, which would be 62. So we know that we need 6 host bits, and that will give us the number necessary for our problem. So there's our 6 host bits. If that's what we need for host bits, then we know that these other 2 bits must be network bits. So total number of subnets, well, the total number of subnets, we calculate that out by using 2 to the n equals our total number of subnets. So we've got 2 to the n, which is 2 to the 2, that's 4. We borrowed 2 network bits, or 2 host bits to get to our number of network bits. So we borrowed 2 bits. Our total number of host addresses, well, we know that the total is going to be 2 to the 6th, and that equals 64. Our number of usable addresses is 62. So the custom subnet mask is going to be 255.255.255.11000000, and that's going to be 128 plus 64. And that's going to give us 192. So our custom subnet mask is going to be 255.255.255.192. Okay, so now for the next part. The next part is calculating out some more complicated information. It's not really that complicated, but it takes a little more time to walk through it. So I'm going to put a fresh piece of paper over here so we can calculate this out. So what's the second subnet range? Well, if we look at this here, we know that our last network bit, the second one in this case, is a value of 64. We start off with our network address of 0. So our very first network, is 198.125.60.0. And so let's see, what's our second network going to be? Well, we know that our second network is going to be 64 places away from the first one, because the value of that last network bit is 64. So we know that it's going to be 198.125.60.64. And then our third network will be 64 plus that, so it's 198.125.60.128. And then finally, our last network, because we only have 4 subnets, our fourth network will be 198.125.60.192. If we add 64 one more time, we get to 256, so we know that we've reached the end. The other way we can tell is that this last value here, this last octet, that .192, is the same as our custom subnet number. So if we have 4 networks, which is what we calculated, and our last network number here is the same as our custom subnet mask's last number, then we're pretty confident that we've done our calculations correctly. Okay, so now on to the next step. What is the second subnet range? Well, the second subnet range starts at .64. This is the network number. And this is the network number for the third network. If we subtract 1 from here, .125, .60, .127, that will give us the broadcast for the second network. So that's the broadcast for the second network. If we subtract 1 from there, 198.125.60.126, that will give us the last usable address on that second subnet. So going the other direction, this is our network number. We can't use the network number for devices, but if we add 198.125.60.65, that is our first usable address. So the total range, range for the second subnet goes from the network number .64 through the broadcast, which is .127. So the answer to this first one is 198.125.60.64 through 198.125.60.127. That's the entire network range. We've already answered this question. What is the subnet number for the second subnet? 198.125.60.64. What is the broadcast address for the fourth subnet? All right, so we're going to go back to our process here. Now, if we added 64, which will come up with an incorrect value because we can't get to 256, but if we just did it just for the sake of getting the math right, really this would be 198.125.61.0 because we can't do this. So we end up with 198.125.61.0. It's kind of like the odometer on a car where once you get to all 9s, you have to roll over. We can't get to 256. Once we get to 255, that's going to give us 61.0. So this would be our theoretical next network. If we subtract 1 from this, so if we think about this in math as like 60.256, which I just crossed out, and we subtract 1 from that, that would give us 60.255, which would be our broadcast for the fourth network. So the broadcast address is 198.125.60.255. And then finally, the last question is, what is the range of assignable or usable Assignable and usable mean the same thing. What is the range? So our fourth network here, 192, we're going to subtract 1, 98.125.60.191. That's our broadcast. Subtract one more from that, because we cannot use the broadcast address, 25.60.190. That's going to be our last usable address. And then from our network number, for the third network, we add 198.125.60.129 will be our first usable address. So that range here, from our first usable to our last usable address, those are the assignable addresses. So that's going to be 198.125.60.129 through 198.125.60.190. So there you have it. That's how you complete the subnetting scenario. Given the parameters of the address and the number of needed subnets or number of needed usable hosts, you can calculate out each of those values.